Hello everybody, welcome to my pendulum guide here. I'm going to be teaching you guys how pendulum monsters work, how to pendulum summon, and then at the end I'm going to quiz you all on it, so make sure you're paying attention. You want to pass the test, right? So first of all, why is there so much text on these cards, right? It looks like a complete information overload, and that's because there's basically three components to these cards, right? The first component is the monster part, and if you look at it like this, it actually looks super simple, right? It's just a normal effect monster. I even made sure to grab one with the same effect. They have a name, they have an attribute, they have the level, they have the pretty picture, they have the type, they have the effect text, attack, defense. It's basically the exact same thing, right? You can also treat them as a spell card. I'm just going to blank out everything that's not relevant for that. While they're treated as a spell card, they remain face up on the field like a continuous or a field spell card, but they're not treated as continuous spell cards, they're not treated as quick plays, they're not treated as field spells, they're not even treated as normal spell cards, they're just an undefined type of spell card, kind of relevant for rulings, but doesn't really matter, to be honest. This one, it's basically just Mystical Space Typhoon. You just pop another spell trap on the field. And the third component here are the pendulum scales, and these are relevant for pendulum summoning, which we'll get to in just a bit. So if they're treated as a spell or as a scale, you place them into the pendulum zones from your hand. These are the ones I've highlighted right here, the outermost spell and trap card zones. Just slap them in there from your hand, and you can ignore the monster effect then. All we need is the spell card effect, because it's treated as a spell, and the scales for pendulum summoning. If they're being treated as monsters, that's the case when they're not in these zones. So anywhere else, that means on the field, or in the hand, graveyard, deck, anywhere where they're not in the pendulum zone, they count as monsters. And this also means we get to just ignore the spell effect and the scales, because they're just basically normal effect monsters, right? There's one difference that's pretty important, and that is that when they leave the field, they actually go face up to the extra deck. Now you might be thinking, what am I smoking? What do you even mean face up into the extra deck? So I'm going to hope my editing prowess can keep up here while I swap over to show you. So right here, we've just set this up. I'm going to special this out, and then we're just going to normal summon one of our pendulum monsters. See, it's just like a normal monster. And now when we link these off, you're going to see the Kashtira Fenrir goes to the graveyard, but our pendulum monster goes face up into the extra deck. You just slap it on top, face up. It counts as in the extra deck. And it's also public knowledge. Since it's face up, anybody can just click on them, look at how many there are, count through them and everything. And since they still count as in the extra deck here, your extra deck can be over 15 cards potentially. It's not right here because I just don't have that many, right? But it can count as in the extra deck card for something like Dogmatica, Albazoa. If you need to send cards from your hand or extra deck to the graveyard, you can just send the face up pendulum monsters that you're not going to use anymore. Alright, so up next we're going to be looking at some of the nuances of them being monster cards. So we're going to have a look at the Double Iris Magician here. It says this card is always treated as a Pendulum Dragon card, and this isn't actually part of its effect, but this is like a ruling thing that always applies. It's similar to all those field spells that are always treated as Umi, like the Pacifist one or a Legendary Ocean. And it's also like the Harpy Ladies, where there's all the different numbers, but they're always treated as Harpy Lady. So this means this is always true. So this even counts when it's not face up on the field, like when it's in the deck. And it also counts when it's in the scale as a spell card. So that's something you have to kind of think about sometimes. It's always applied. Other thing that's really interesting is if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add a Pendulum Graph card from your deck to your hand. Now, if it gets destroyed by battle, it was obviously a monster, right? Because spell cards can't battle. And then it gets destroyed and goes to the face up extra deck. And when it gets sent to the face up extra deck, it's chilling in there and it's like, oh hey, I just got destroyed. let me trigger this effect, right? So you're obviously going to search for the Pendulum Graph card. Now, the interesting thing here is if it's a spell card and your opponent destroys it with something like Mystical Space Typhoon or whatever, then it'll get sent to the face-up extra deck, and then it'll be like, oh hey, I just got destroyed, and it's a monster in the face-up extra deck, so this effect applies. So even if it's destroyed as a spell card, it still gets this monster effect. So that's something that confuses a lot of newer players, something that you have to keep in mind as well. All right, let's get to Pendulum Summoning here. So we're going to take 2 Pendulum cards, we're going to place them in our Pendulum zones, left and the right one. It doesn't matter which one goes to which. The pendulum scales are always the same on both sides of each card. It's just for additional clarity or confusion, I guess, depending on how you see it. It doesn't matter which one is in the left zone, which one is in the right zone. All that matters is the 2 pendulum scale levels you have. So we have 1 and 8 here, and then once per turn you can summon any number of monsters from your hand or face up extra deck whose levels are exclusively in between these, right? So this means you can't summon only pendulum monsters, right? But you can summon any monster whose level is between these 2 numbers. So even hand traps, normal monsters, anything at all, but it has to be between, right? So since we have 1 and 8, we can summon from 2 to 7, which means cards that have the levels 1 and 8 cannot be summoned here. It's just not allowed. Some extra rulings I'm just going to go through real quick. So if they get sent from the field to the graveyard, we just learned that they go to the face-up extra deck instead. They still go to the graveyard though if they're sent from the deck, or from the extra deck, or from the hand, and importantly, if they're detached from an Exceed monster where they were being treated as material, because that also does not count as on the field. Another interesting ruling is stuff like Macrocosmos, Dimension Shifter, Kashtira Arise Heart, that say any card that would be sent to the graveyard will be banished instead. These actually override the game rules. So our pendulum monsters unfortunately get banished instead, which really hurts. Some other things to watch out for. They cannot be sent to the graveyard as cost if they're on the field, because if they go from the field to the graveyard, they instead get sent from the field to the face-up extra deck. So your pendulum scales cannot be sent to the graveyard as a cost for something like Magician's Souls, because you cannot actually fulfill the cost. You can still send them to the graveyard for effect. They would just go to the face-up extra deck instead. Something else is the pendulum scales cannot be activated when you're locked under Secret Village of the Spellcasters or Anti-Spell Fragrance, since when you activate them from your hand, when you place them into your pendulum zones, you're activating them from your hand as a spell card. And these 2 cards say, hey, you can't just activate spell cards from your hand, what are you doing? And of course you can't scale them face down. I don't know. Would be interesting if you could though. Another thing is some pendulum monsters actually lock you into summoning only certain monsters. Like the Cleafort Scout here says you cannot special summon monsters except for Clee monsters. There's also some that change their scale depending on what's in the other pendulum zone, but both of these things are more of deck building considerations than actual gameplay considerations. Now, getting negated always sucks. Solemn Judgment is the bane of pendulum decks. If you're activating your pendulum scale, they get negated by Solemn Judgment. They technically never hit the field. Is like the visualization, right? To understand the ruling for it. It's basically you have the card in your hand, and while you're trying to place it into the zone, your opponent flips over a Solemn Judgment, says, yo, I'm negating this. So the card never actually reaches the field, and therefore it can't get sent from the field to the graveyard and instead to the face-up extra deck. So it gets sent from not the field, so it goes to the graveyard. Really sad. This is the Solemn Judgment guy. I can't draw, I'm sorry. If you're pendulum summoning, this one hurts even more. The cards also, while you're summoning, they never hit the field. even the ones from the Face Up Extra deck. You basically take the stuff from the Face Up Extra deck from your hand, you're holding it in your hand, you put all them together in your hand, and you're like, hey, like your actual physical hand, right? You say, hey, I want to summon all of these dudes, and then while you're trying to place them down, your opponent flips Solemn Judgment and negates the summon, and this actually negates all of them. Very unfortunate, and they're all sent to the graveyard because they never got sent from the field. Very unfortunate. This guy's still not Jesus. Quiz time! I hope you guys are all prepared. I'm going to be showing you some in-game game states in Master Duel, and then I want you guys to tell me what can I summon here. All right, so what we have here is we have the Kashtira Rise Heart. It's a level 4. We have an Ignite Squire, level 3, scale 7. And then we have 2 copies of the Ignite Paladin. It's a level 4, scale 2. And we have Call by the Grave. There's no summon restrictions on any of these. I'm not trying to trick you with these. It's just to see if you've understood it. So if we were to scale 2 cards here, how many cards could we Pendulum Summon? So you can pause the video here for a sec, or I'm just going to keep talking for a little bit so you can think about it. And also I'd like to know which cards we would be scaling here. All right, so I hope you've thought about this for a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a low scale here. We're going to place it into pendulum scale, and now we need another high scale. So if we put 2 low scales, we couldn't pendulum summon anything at all, which would really suck. So we're going to just scale this one right here. And now what can we summon? Anything between the levels of 2 and 7. So level 3, 4, 5, or 6. So we're just going to click on Pendulum Summon here. And we get to summon out both of these guys. All right, so that was a simple example. All right, for this one, we have the Infernoble Knight Renaud, level 1. We have the Therion Bull Ein is level 7. Ignite Crusader is level 3, scale 2. And then we have these 2 spell cards here. What can we Pendulum Summon here? Gonna give you like 5 seconds to think about this. Think about what we can scale, what we can summon. All right, the answer is, it was a trick question. We only have 1 scale. You can scale this if you want, but you have nothing else for the other scale, so we couldn't summon anything at all here. So this is one of the weaknesses of pendulum decks, is if you don't find 2 scale. All right, this one is a little bit more tricky. We have the Maxi, a level 2. Kashtira Unicorn is level 7. We have the Ignite Crusader is a level 3, scale 2. The Ignite Squire is a level 3, scale 7. And the Ignite Templar is a level 4, scale 7. Just gonna click on these a little bit more so you can look at them again. And I want you to tell me, what can we Pendulum Summon if we don't do any extra steps, right? So just the initial Pendulum Summon right here. Think about that for a bit. So what we could do is we would have 1 scale 2 and 2 scale 7s. So we can just scale this guy right here. We can scale this guy right here. And now we want to Pendulum Summon. And what can we summon? We cannot summon the Maxi since it's level 2. We cannot summon the Kashtira Unicorn because it's level 7. But we can Pendulum Summon the Ignite Squire here, which is level 3. So you can see this is the only card I have available to Pendulum Summon here. So now you might be thinking, that's absolutely atrocious. Why would you even run level 2s and level 7s in your deck? What if you can't play again? If you have a look at this hand, we have a level 4. We have another level 7 here. And then we have a level 3, scale 7, a level 5, scale 7, and a level 4, scale 7. So what can we Pendulum Summon here? Again, we cannot Pendulum Summon anything at all since we have 3 of the same scale. So that sucks. Now, you might be thinking, this deck is trash. Why would you ever play Pendulum? But of course, Pendulums have ways to play around this. There's cards like Electromite or Beyond the Pendulum that can let you play. And then you have the effects of these monsters as well that you have to think about. They're not just there as only the scales, but they also have the spell effects. And the Ignites have the effect, if you have an Ignite card in your other Pendulum zone, you can destroy both cards in your Pendulum zones. And if you do, add a Fire Warrior monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand. So let's go ahead. Ignis Phoenix is always treated as an Ignite card, and this is where the example from before comes up, where it's always treated as an Ignite card. So it says it in the monster effect. You can see down here as well, but since this always applies, this counts even if it's in the scale. You can see this is glowing. I can activate this since I have an Ignite card in my other Pendulum scale. And I'll just add something to our hand here. Doesn't really matter what it is here. Just go ahead and grab Ignite Paladin. And now, once again, the nuance that we talked about earlier, if this card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, it was treated as a spell card the whole time, right? But now it's been destroyed and now it is a monster again. And this is where it sees, oh, hey, it got destroyed while it was treated as a, well, it saw it while it was treated as a monster, right? Even if it was destroyed while it was a spell. So we can use this effect here to summon out one of our dudes here. And now we have 2 scales here. Oops, this one. And now we could use these effects again, or we can Pendulum Summon. What can we Pendulum Summon here? In our extra deck, we have level 4, level 5. In our hand, we have level 4, level 7. Think about it for a second. Pop this up once again right here. All right. And we can Pendulum Summon for 3 monsters here, is what you would think. But unfortunately, you can only summon the ones from the extra deck into the extra monster zone or a zone where your link monster points to. So if I were to summon this guy from my hand right here, we could go into a link monster. I'm going to not use its first effect here just for clarity, since you can't summon the monster, you add off of it. But if we Pendulum Summon here, you can see we can now summon 2 guys since we have 2 link arrows here. We can't summon from our hand though, because it's a level 7. It's kind of unfortunate. All right, so just to show you guys some things, we'll do one more. All right, now this one is less Pendulum specific, but more to show you that the decks that play Pendulum cards have a lot of different ways of playing, even through hands that look really, really unfortunate. Here we have a level 3, a level 9, a level 4 scale 7, level 5 scale 7, and again the Margrave is still a level 5 scale 7. So this looks pretty atrocious. What can we do here? And Ignites have the effect to pop each other, search for a Fire Warrior here. So we might as well use this. And the Sublimation Knight lets us go into Isolde off of 1 card. So if we use this as our normal summon, we'll just do the quick combo shenanigans here. Summon this out. And now we can go into an Isolde. And the interesting thing about the Ignites and Isolde is they have a really unique interaction where Isolde on summon can add a warrior monster from your deck to your hand, but you cannot normal summon, set, or special summon monsters with that name, nor activate their monster effects. And this is another interesting nuance we have here. For the Pendulums, I'm going to add a low scale since we have a high scale in hand already. And so this one, we can obviously just scale it, right? But this one, we cannot summon. We cannot activate its monster effects or anything, but we can still activate it as a spell card because it's not the monster effect. All right, and this lets us Pendulum Summon. How many? We have 2 of the Margraves here, level 5s in the face-up extra deck. We have an Ash Blossom, level 3 in hand, and the Gearfried is level 9 in hand. And we have 2 link zones from the Isolde. All right. So if you want to think about it for another second, you can pause the video. So what we can do here is we can actually pen summon 3 monsters. All right, we have the 2 from the extra deck because their levels are between the scales, and we have the 2 link arrows, and we have the Ash Blossom, which is also between the levels of 2 and 7. So this isn't like super Pendulum specific. You can keep comboing from here as well, but just want to show that even if your hand looks completely trash, right? Just 3 high scales, really high level monster you can't summon, and a hand trap, you can still combo off from here. So if I properly built this deck, this is probably like 6 or 7 interruptions, but I just threw together some Ignites to show off some pen summoning. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. I'll be sure to get to them as soon as possible. And if I completely missed out on something, I'll be sure to make a follow-up video as well. All right, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Yeah.